Hi, and welcome to Making the Strange, a podcast about how we made our fiction podcast. We'll take you along in real time as we create our fiction podcast. I'm Jennifer, the writer and creator of the Strange Chronicles.
And I'm Chris, the producer of the Strange Chronicles, a sci-fi noir detective podcast.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about the podcast envy. This one is about self-doubt, about how we deal with presenting our work into a pool of projects with significant financial backing and production values. We'll talk about the emotions of putting your work out into a world with a competitive marketplace.
We'll also discuss a technical mishap that happened along the way, something we hope can help you. And in our How's the Writing Going segment, Jennifer will discuss how the writing is going.
And finally, we'll provide a podcast tip, something that you can use as a strategy for your own podcast. Making the Strange is a bit of an experiment. We will fill you in on our experience of making a fiction podcast.
The experiment is partly to keep us on task to make sure we complete the season, and also to share what the experience is like for others who might have an interest in telling a fiction story through a podcast.
So if you happen to be one of those people, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at info@thestrangechronicles.com, and we're going to have a Q&A episode coming up soon. Okay, now it's time for our technical magic. Chris, tell us something magical that happened with the tech.
So much magic!
This really is magical, this one.
It's kind of fun. It was a fun little thing. So if you get our newsletter, you'll know we've been dabbling in a little bit of AI collaborative art.
That's AI as in?
Artificial intelligence.
Software?
Yeah, software. So this sort of leads into the whole podcast envy episode in that they have all the money to do all the marketing and pay people to create really amazing artwork. And I think we could create our own amazing artwork. We have created some of our own amazing artwork. We have that skill set, but we don't necessarily have the time.
Yes.
So I came across some AI art creators recently. One of them is Dolly. I don't have that one yet. I'm on the waiting list, eagerly anticipating getting my confirmation email. But I did get into Midjourney, which is a bot that's run through a Discord server. So what you can do is you go in, you open up the Discord app, log in with Midjourney, and you basically type /imagine and just get descriptive. And within minutes, this AI will kick out a beautiful series of 4 images based on what you described.
So we used this for the Strange Chronicles. So we took the characters of the Strange Chronicles. That was the first one you tried, right?
Yeah. I went and put in, our parameters for what Gray Cooper might look like. And I was really generic to start. Like, I didn't want to get very specific because you really haven't given too much of a visual description of what she looks like.
Right.
We know do we know she drives a Nova?
Yes.
We know
I don't know if we know in the podcast.
Yeah, it's in the book.
Right. So the Strange Chronicles is going to have a book series going along with it. But we know she wears a trench coat.
And I like the idea of, the detective trope of her wearing a fedora.
Yes, I know. She's like a little bit Carmen Sandiego when it comes to her style.
In the future.
Yeah, futuristic.
So I basically just put in, I typed in female 30s, trench coat, fedora.
Dystopia, future.
Dystopia, sci-fi, future, nighttime.
Noir.
I don't think I even used noir.
Did you? Oh.
Yeah, I only used a few words. And then, a couple minutes later, I had 4 options of what that could be. And they were kind of cool. And from there, you can basically go in and you can up-res them, or you can do more variations on an image. And from there, you grow and grow and grow. And each time you're sort of honing it and telling it what you like and don't like. And eventually you come to this final image that it has created.
It's really cool.
It's really, really cool.
Really trippy.
It's terrifying.
It's very terrifying, especially what, some of the more human descriptions come out of their software.
Yeah. No, it's really terrifying. But for people like us who are independently creating our art, it's a useful tool. We never want to say, or never want anyone to think that we don't think human art is the way to go, because it's 1,000% the way to go.
Of course.
But I look at this as another tool like Photoshop that just helps speeds up the process.
Yeah.
And I think down the road, it will be really helpful when you're trying to create things like mood boards or put a Bible together and you just need some quick imagery and Google isn't working out for you, Like, you don't want to worry about pulling someone's licensed work in. You just want to create something original.
Yes. And the images are truly amazing. So if you want to take a look at those and you don't subscribe to our newsletter, it's just an email list. You can go to thestrangechronicles.com and join our list. We don't spam or anything. And it's just, only things about the podcast or things related to it like this. And we'll also post some of the images on social media. So at Making the Strange and at the Strange Chronicles podcast on Instagram.
And at Kings of Content on Twitter.
Yeah, we'll post some of these images because they are really, really cool.
Yeah, I've gone a little deeper down the rabbit hole with this, and you've given me all the episode titles.
Right.
And who the main antagonists are in each of the episodes. And I've gone in and I've started to run those through the machine just to see what it comes up with. So I'm going to share those with you later and see if it
they're pretty cool.
They help set the mood for writing.
Yeah, I think we're going to choose an image per episode to help promote the podcast. So we'll definitely be using some robot tech in our future episodes. That was definitely a technical magic for sure.
Yeah, it's fun. All right, next up, we are going to discuss how the writing is going. So Jen, how is the writing going?
The writing is full of hope and promise. Well, actually, I just completed a huge writing project.
The novel?
Yes, the novel. I have a big novel coming out in February of 2023, and it just went to the copy editor, which I'm so proud and excited that it's moved to this stage. But now I can come back to the podcast as far as writing is concerned, and I can focus solely on the Strange Chronicles. So we did a quick rundown of episodes, and I have a lot of ideas, and I'm so ready to go. So my verdict on the writing today is I'm set up for success.
Yay, I love that. All right, next up we're going to, we'll get into the subject of this podcast. As we were doing the marketing, we were listening to a lot of other podcasts and seeing what else was out there and how they were marketing their materials. And that sort of led us to some podcast envy.
Yes. This is the point in our journey where we've been researching the other podcasts and figuring out how to get listeners and where their production values are, etc.
But a lot of this research was set up in how to attract listeners, how to get people to listen to this podcast and tune in and subscribe and keep coming back week after week. So we wanted to see what other podcasts were doing.
Yeah, and what other people are listening to and loving. So as our title of the podcast is Podcast Envy, it's because some of the other fiction podcasts are pretty aspirational. They have name actors, A-list actors, and a giant cast and amazing production value.
Yeah, just huge production companies funneling money into these things that just gobs and gobs of money.
Yes, and so this gives way to some of the bigger conversations we've been having as of late as artists. Should we be trying to sell our stuff to big companies, or do we create it as indies? And how do we compete with the big stuff, We're just trying to figure out where we fit in this giant field.
They've just got teams of people doing everything we're trying to do as two people. They've got multiple actors, they've got professional editors, they've got writers, they've got people doing sound design, they've got people doing music, they've got people, doing...
Yeah, when they list their credits at the end, they're like 25 people long. We're just like, whoa, how are all those people participating in this one project? I mean, we're looking at them like, oh, these are great stories and it's really cool. But we just want to see, kind of where we fit in this bigger pool.
Yeah, it's how do we get discovered in that market? There's a temptation to want to sell your work to a big production company and get that institution that I was just talking about behind you and help get your work out there to a larger audience. But then when you do that, you do lose full control. You lose autonomy over your work. You lose that creative force. You lose your creative voice a bit.
Right. And for me, this question comes up a lot. And you think to yourself as an artist, why do I need the bigger company to have my work? Is it due to validation? Is it money? Is it an audience? And all of those things are completely valid reasons, right? We all want to make a living. We all want to feel seen and feel validated. And then we want to share our work.
Or hear our work.
Yeah, exactly. When I've asked that question to myself, the why, I realize sometimes that the why isn't aligned with my values or what I really want. If you really get down to it, sometimes it's just due to validation, right? Like it's just ego. That's another thing that you have to consider. Is your ego high on the priority list of things? The other things like money and market, those things are very important, I would say. You need to make money to live and you need to put it out there to a bigger market so that you can make money. So, these are all questions that I feel like have come up. And I just think we should try to remain aligned to our values as well as trying to get our work out there to the most people that we can. Whether your goal is to make a podcast as part of a business or as a creative outlet, just check in with what your why is, because it might help you making those decisions. Some people are doing it for their business and some people are doing it as just a creative outlet to tell a story. So just knowing those answers is very helpful in making like the bigger decisions, and also is kind of comforting when you're looking at these amazing podcasts that are full of celebrities and lots of money.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thing. You get out there and you see these big names producing podcasts, and you look at your own little podcast that could, and it can feel overwhelming, and those emotions are really strong, and you sometimes think like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, if only 3 people are going to listen to it, you, me, and our mom. you know?
Yeah, I think it's a big emotional experience producing anything, podcast, TV, film, music, any kind of art. You got a lot of emotion behind it as a creator. And when you start seeing these big names out there producing something you're trying to do as well. I mean, there's not only are there big names out there, there's like 5 million other podcasts out there because there's people like us who are producing independently, and you just sort of, it can feel a little overwhelming and you don't want to get defeated. You want to make sure your work is found amongst all the greatness that's out there and amongst all the volume of work that's out there.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
It can really be overwhelming. You really just have to dig deep and keep pushing through and realizing that, like, hey, I can do this. It might take me a lot longer than those well-financed projects that are really just churning it through.
Yeah, I think too is not to let it, this is a little bit bleeding into perfectionism if you think about it. That thing that we talked about when we were saying how we need to push through and finish no matter what, because these little seeds of self-doubt, like, oh, there are all these amazing fiction podcasts out there now that we're competing with, that can be a big obstacle to make you reconsider, maybe not feel as confident about putting your work out there. But I think that this is the time that we say, keep going, finish. And one of the great things about podcasts and audio right now, at least, is that once your podcast is made and it's up and it's posted, that can be there for someone to find later. So maybe we don't find our audience right away. Maybe it takes some time for people because there are so many awesome podcasts. It might take a little while to build that audience, but we have time. It's not like there's some big time limit in getting your audience. But I would say that, yeah, it can be overwhelming seeing everything that's out there that you're kind of swimming in the pool with. But at the same time, like,
don't get defeated.
Yeah, keep going. If you're started, finish it.
I think something that's helped me when sometimes I just want to stop and put it all down and say, what's the point? That's when I break away and do those other fun little side projects like the AI artwork or even making the music, just something to get the creative juices flowing again and get me excited again. Mm-hmm. It really just helps me refocus and take that energy back into working on the pod.
That's a good bonus tip.
Sorry.
If you're feeling overwhelmed, to maybe change lanes a little bit. Do something, work on some other aspect of the podcast.
All right, that finishes up the podcast envy bit of this episode. And now it's time for our podcast tip, our real podcast tip, something that we learned to help make your journey easier.
And the podcast tip for today is to complete a promo or an episode and launch it before your official podcast launch. This is to see how long it takes the episode to post so that you can schedule the rest.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit, but we launched a promo for this series to sort of give it a test run and see how long it would take to get up on all the various services. Unfortunately, most of them, as we said, were really, really quick. There were a few that were slower, but all in all, by the time we wanted to launch the series, everything was up and ready and running smoothly. And then every time we wanted to upload the next episode, it's there and ready when we say and we tell the audience that it's going to launch.
Right. So that's the tip. Post one thing, whether it's a teaser, a promo, or even the first episode early before your projected launch. This will give you a solid way to schedule going forward. So even if you aren't planning to launch until a certain specific date, maybe launch it a week or two early just to make sure it goes through.
Yeah, you don't have to tell everybody it's up there and just no one will look for it.
Exactly. That will give you a little more control.
And that control is good because it keeps you on schedule and manages expectations. So that's it for this episode of Making the Strange.
We want to thank you for tuning in to our journey into making a fiction podcast and hope that we can inspire you to create your own story because we believe that everyone has a story to tell.
Please email us with any podcast tips or questions you may have at info@thestrangechronicles.com.
Thanks for listening. You can follow us on Instagram at Making the Strange and at The Strange Chronicles Podcast. And be on the lookout for The Strange Chronicles, a sci-fi detective fiction podcast launching Halloween 2022. Until our next episode, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Chris. Keep it strange.
This has been a Kings of Content production.